Stop. I need you to picture this because this is happening right now at halter shows across America. It's December, Oklahoma City, the AQHA World Show. It's freezing outside, but inside the arena it's warm. It smells like fresh shavings, expensive leather, and hairspray. 30 horses are standing head to tail in the winter circle. These are the most perfect, most muscled quarter horses on the planet. Each one is worth more than a new truck, some worth more than a house. And here's the insane fact that no one in that arena wants to say out loud. Statistically, 3 out of every 10 horses in that line are carrying a genetic time bomb. You cannot see it, you cannot feel it. Their papers are perfect, their muscles are perfect. But inside their DNA is a single typo that can take a 1,200-pound champion, an animal bred to be tough enough to survive on the frontier, and drop it straight to the ground in under 60 seconds. Muscles locked, sweating, eyes wide open, completely conscious while its own body suffocates it. For almost 30 years, no one knew why horses were dying like this. No one knew where it came from. Until geneticists at UC Davis traced every single case, every single shivering, collapsing horse back to one stallion. One horse. Born in 1969, dead in 1995. His name was Impressive, and the irony of that name will haunt this breed forever. What I am about to tell you is not just the story of a bad gene. It's the story of how America fell in love with a look. How that look made people millionaires, and how that look almost destroyed the most popular horse breed on earth. It's about money, ego, and a cover-up that the quarter horse industry is still paying for today. I spent the last 3 months digging through old AQHA journals from the 80s, buried vet reports from UC Davis, and old convention minutes that breeders hoped would never see the light of day. What I found was way darker than just a sick horse. It was a system that rewarded extreme muscle so much it was willing to ignore bodies breaking right in front of it. Because the very thing that made Impressive famous, the trait that made judges throw him every blue ribbon, was the disease itself. So before we get into the science of how a muscle locks and how a heart stops, you have to understand what we had before him. Because we didn't just gain a disease, we lost a horse. In 1950, a quarter horse looked like an athlete. Look up Poco Bueno, look up 3 bars. They had a short back, a deep heart girth, clean legs with big bone, and a massive, powerful, round hip that could get underneath them and turn on a dime. They could run a quarter-mile faster than any thoroughbred, then turn around and cut a cow, rope a steer, and carry your kid home. One horse could do everything. That's why they took over America. Then in the 60s, halter got rich, huge money, and halter doesn't judge how a horse works. It judges how a horse looks standing still. And the look that started winning was more. More muscle, more bulk, horses that looked like bodybuilders. On April 9th, 1969, a colt was born that would change everything forever. Sired by Lucky Bar out of Glamour Bars, his breeder called him Impressive. His forearm was the size of a man's thigh. His chest was 2 feet wide. When he walked into a halter class, it wasn't a contest, it was a coronation. He became world champion, then his sons became world champions, then his grandsons. At his peak, he was covering over 100 mares a year. And because we just invented cooled shipped semen, his genes went everywhere. By the early 90s, before anyone knew there was a problem, his blood was running through more than 55,000 living registered foals, 55,000 ticking clocks. And in the next part, I'm going to show you exactly what happens when that clock hits 0. So what actually happens during an attack? I want you to really understand this, because this is the horror that was hiding in plain sight for a decade. Inside every muscle cell in a horse, and in your body too, there are tiny gates called sodium channels. Think of them like doors that control electricity. They swing open, sodium rushes in. That tells the muscle to contract. Then they snap shut instantly so the muscle can relax. Open, close. Perfect timing, thousands of times a second. A horse with HYPP has a typo in the blueprint for that door. The gene is called SCN4A. One single letter out of millions is misspelled. That one typo means the door doesn't close properly. It leaks. Sodium keeps dripping in. When that happens, potassium in the blood suddenly spikes, and the muscle gets stuck in the on position. It fires, and fires, and fires again. It cannot stop. From the outside, here is what you see. A horse is standing perfectly calm in its stall, maybe eating hay. Then you see a little tremor in the flank. The skin starts rippling like flies are landing on it, but there are no flies. Within 10 seconds, the tremor becomes a violent shaking. The hindquarters quiver, the horse parks out like it has to urinate, sweat pours down its neck. Some horses make this horrible high-pitched roar because their throat muscles are spasming shut and they can't breathe. Then they go down. 1,200 pounds of solid muscle collapses like a building, legs stiff as boards straight out, and the horse is fully conscious the entire time, eyes wide open, terrified. If the potassium gets high enough, it hits the heart. The heart is a muscle too. It goes into a fatal irregular rhythm and the horse dies. Right there, in the barn aisle, at a show, in front of children. And the triggers? This is the cruelest part. Stress from trailering to a show. A sudden cold snap. Anything high in potassium, alfalfa hay, molasses, bran can set it off. Excitement can set it off. A horse could win a world championship in the morning and be dead by nightfall from eating the wrong hay. Now here is the genetics that makes this a disaster. HYPP is autosomal dominant. That means you only need one copy to get sick. If a horse is H/N, one bad copy and one normal copy, it can have full-blown lethal attacks. If it is H/H, two bad copies, it will almost certainly suffer terribly and die young. And impressive? When they finally tested his preserved tissue years after he died, he was H/H. Homozygous positive, 2 copies. That means every single foal he ever sired got at least 1 copy. 100% of his direct children were carriers. No exceptions. For almost a decade, breeders refused to connect the dots. They would have a gorgeous 2-year-old futurity champion tie up and collapse after winning. And they would say, oh, it's just tying up syndrome. Because if you admitted what it was, you had to admit your $50,000 stallion was genetically poisoned. In fact, some old-timers bragged about it. I found an interview from 1988 where a famous halter breeder said, quote, "You know you got a good one when he starts to quiver before the class." They thought the muscle tremors were a sign of extreme muscling. They normalized the disease because it looked like success. They selected for the disease. It wasn't until 1992 that Dr. Sharon Spear at UC Davis finally isolated the mutation. In 1994, they released a simple DNA test, just pull 30 mane hairs and mail them in. And when researchers took that test to the 1994 AQHA World Show and started quietly swabbing halter horses, the results were apocalyptic. 28%. Almost 3 in 10 halter horses in the World Show ring-tested positive for HYPP. That stat from your screenshot is real. It was a pandemic and we had bred it on purpose for show ribbons. And what the AQHA did next is even worse. When the HYPP test came out in 1994, the AQHA could have ended it in one vote, one rule. No more registration for H/H horses. Mandatory testing for all breeding stallions. The breed gets healthier overnight. They didn't do it. For 4 years, they did almost nothing. And you need to understand why, because this is where this story stops being about horses and starts being about power. By 1994, the impressive line wasn't just a bloodline, it was the entire halter industry. The top 10 leading halter sires in the country were all sons or grandsons of impressive. Stud fees were $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a pop. A weanling with that extreme look could sell for $100,000. Entire farms in Texas and Oklahoma were built on impressive blood. If you banned HYPP, you were telling the richest, most powerful breeders that half their horses were worthless overnight, so they fought it. Viciously. I pulled the minutes from the 1996 AQHA convention. One director stood up and said, "On the record, we are not going to destroy our breeders to save our breed." Another argued that if we require testing, buyers will sue us into bankruptcy. Meanwhile, horses kept dying. There are obituaries in Quarter Horse Journal from 1995, 1996, 1997, beautiful 3-year-old world champions dead in their stalls at night. Cause of death listed as unknown or colic. But every vet in that barn knew the truth. It was HYPP. Buyers started suing. A family in California bought an H/H yearling for $60,000, were never told it had HYPP, and watched it die screaming in their front yard within 6 months. The lawsuits piled up. The USDA started sending letters. Public pressure finally forced them to act. In 1998, they made a weak, toothless rule. You had to test foals descended from impressive if you wanted to disclose it. Not mandatory, just recommended. It took until 2007, 13 full years after the test existed, for the AQHA to finally say, no foal that tests H/H can ever be registered again. 13 years. Think about how many foals were born, suffered, and died in that window that never had to exist. But here is the part that the other video you are trying to beat completely missed, and this is how you will beat it. HYPP was just the alarm bell. When you breed for one extreme trait and you breed brother to sister, cousin to lock it in, you shrink the gene pool to a puddle. And when you do that, all the other recessive monsters wake up. In the 2000s, we discovered GBED, glycogen branching enzyme deficiency. A foal is born, looks perfect, then within weeks it dies because its body cannot store sugar, 100% fatal, and it traces to King and Xantanon, 2 foundation sires that impressive goes back to. Then came HERDA, hereditary equine regional dermal asthenia. This one is pure horror. The skin has no strength. A horse goes under saddle and the skin over its back literally peels off like wet tissue paper. Riders would pull a saddle off and find the horse bleeding underneath. It traces to Poco Bueno, another halter legend that was line-bred to death. Then PSSM, polysaccharide storage myopathy, where horses tie up so badly they can't move, their urine turns dark red with muscle death. And malignant hyperthermia, where a horse dies under anesthesia. 5 fatal genetic diseases, all now rampant in quarter horses, all amplified because we decided that a horse that looked like a bodybuilder was more valuable than a horse that could work all day. And that leads to the final question that will keep your viewers watching till the end. What did we actually lose? I want you to do something. Pull up 2 photos side by side. On the left, put Wimpy P1, the very first registered American quarter horse. Or 3 bars. They are balanced, deep heart girth, big soft eye, short back, strong clean legs with big bone, and a massive powerful round hip that can get underneath and drive. They look like they could run a quarter mile in 20 seconds flat, then turn around and drag a calf out of a branding pen, then carry your 8-year-old kid home safe. That was the magic. That's why the quarter horse took over America. Because one horse could do everything. Now on the right, put an extreme modern halter horse from 2020. What do you see? The chest is so wide, the front legs look like toothpicks stuck into a barrel. The feet are tiny, size 0 when they should be a size 2 because tiny feet look daintier. They are post-legged in the back, straight-hocked, so they cannot push or stop. Many have such a massive front end and such weak hinds they are a constant 1 out of 5 lame. They live in stalls, on deep shavings, on joint injections because they would break down in a pasture. They are statues. Beautiful, expensive, fragile statues. We traded the ultimate working horse for a show ring decoration that can barely walk. And that is what we lost when the quarter horse took over America. We didn't just lose health. We lost the quarter horse itself. We lost versatility. We lost soundness. So how do we fix this? This is the hopeful part you need for your outro. The solution already exists and it is ridiculously cheap. It's called the 5-panel test. For about $50 to $75, one main hair sample tests for all 5 major diseases: HYPP, HERDA, GBED, PSSM1, and malignant hyperthermia. One test, for life. Any responsible breeder today does it. The AQHA now requires it for all breeding stallions. Smart breeders use it not to cull good horses, but to breed smarter. If you have a mare that is H/N for HYPP, you breed her to a stallion that is N/N, completely clean. You will never get an H/H foal that suffers. It is so simple. And as a buyer, you have all the power. Never ever buy a quarter horse, especially a halter-bred one, without seeing the 5-panel results in writing. No panel, no sale. Say that in your video exactly like that, it will get you thousands of comments. If they get defensive, if they say, "Oh, we never had problems," walk away. I want to be very clear, Impressive was not a villain. He was a beautiful, kind, incredible horse. He didn't know his DNA was broken. He didn't ask to be bred to 1,000 mares. He was just being what we asked him to be. The villain was never the horse. The villain was a system that saw dollar signs in muscle and refused to look at the trembling underneath. This story is a warning for every animal we breed. Dogs that can't breathe because we wanted a flat face. Cattle that need C-sections because we wanted double muscling. When we breed for a look instead of a life, the animal always pays the price. If this hit you, if you own a quarter horse or you just love horses, smash that subscribe button, because next week I am breaking down the exact same thing happening right now in thoroughbreds, why Kentucky Derby winners are more fragile than ever, and which bloodline is responsible. Drop a comment below. Has your horse ever been 5-panel tested? I read every single one. Go hug your horse. I'll see you in the next one.